I know a guy that he gives a ton of credit to, so much credit for his development, is Aaron Glenn. And I don't know if you guys saw ESPN put out, and they've been reporting, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. Aaron Glenn has been generating a lot of buzz in the head coach market. He said he's been generating more buzz this upcoming offseason than he has in past years. Like, this is it's trending the way of Aaron Glenn getting some opportunity somewhere. And I want to pull this up so I can kind of quote from it. So Jeremy writes, Glenn is, quote, generating more NFL buzz than in the past. He says his name comes up more here. I'll put this up for you guys so you guys can see it. But his name comes up more often in league circles. And he also said here, he's not just talking about the Saints. We're talking about other teams as well, potentially. Here, let me put this on the screen. So his name comes up more often in league circles than I remember, and that's not just in relation to the Saints job, which he has ties as a former assistant coach there. He's always had leadership traits and now has the proof of concept with Detroit's surging defense. So we're talking, fellas, we're not just talking about the Saints here. I mean, that's probably the favorite for him to go.
Yeah.
We're talking about Aaron Glenn. Other teams are like, hey, I want Aaron Glenn. Aaron, bring him home.
Yeah, I'd be even willing real quick just to say, like, same situation with the Saints as there is with the Jets right now. I mean, they need a complete culture shock. And as far as the guy that to lead the locker room, that's the thing that they don't have right now. I think Aaron Glenn, the main attraction for him is one, obviously, he's been a part of a rebuild, but that's a guy, whatever locker room he goes into, he's going to command. So I think the Saints, obvious connection, but I could even see the New York Jets. They probably want to stick with the defense. Because they only have a couple more years of Aaron Rodgers. That defense is very good. So I wouldn't be surprised if they want to keep that defensive-minded head coach. So I think the Jets, outside the Saints, a good team to watch as well.
Yeah. John.
I might go ahead.
No, I was just waiting for – I thought you were about to go, Boone. I mean, obviously you kind of do think the Saints. I was just going to ask, what other teams do you think? I mean, game like Sunday night where he has a shutout second half like that and really just won them that game when the Lions offense were struggling. You've seen countless plays out there or called plays out there where AG just kind of shut Houston down. I mean, CJ Stroud was kind of irrelevant that entire second half. So wherever AG does end up going, he definitely deserves the job. I was just kind of going to ask you, Boone, after you went, is there any other spots where you guys think, I mean, the Jets wouldn't be a bad one, but do they go to another defensive-minded head coach after Saleh kind of struggled there and never really got the offense going? And I mean, obviously it's still not going now, but I don't really know of any other teams. I feel like the Saints is kind of just like a match made in heaven for them. So
I don't know. Boone, let me just say this because you can go on about the Saints. I just want to say with Aaron Glenn, I think he's going to get a job before Ben Johnson. I'll just say that. I think because Ben is going to be a little more picky because he's so good that he can choose where he goes. I think Aaron Glenn, not that he's not good. He's good. He's good. He's a very good defensive coordinator, but I think he's more open to just taking on a challenge. Like I think he's more like, just chill. If I get an elite quarterback, I'll go coach them. But Aaron Glenn's like, I'll go to the Saints. You think Ben Johnson would ever go to the Saints? Like, fuck no. But Aaron Glenn, he's got that dog in him. He'll go over there and coach that franchise. And try and turn them around, probably because he's been around Dan. He sees what Dan's done. But I think, honestly, it's realistic, Boone, that AG gets a job before Ben. I do think so.
Yeah, I said it yesterday, and we had the conversation with Klotz. Like, I mentioned it. Like, obviously, I've been all over AG to the Saints over the last few months. But, like, if I had to pick a coordinator, and it's crazy to say, who's the one that you're, like, 100% sure is going to get a head coaching job, I probably would say AG. And it's not because he's better than Ben, and I think Ben's the best offensive mind right now, OC in the NFL. It's just more so to where I think being an offensive-minded coach and a defensive-minded head or coach, that when you break it down, like defensive-minded coaches, like the trend in the NFL is no longer defense. Like as much as you would want it to be, it's no longer defense. People want the offensive. Like you see what's happening in Chicago, and it's like a clear like spitting image of like, hey, we need to move on from Eberflus. We need to go get an offensive-minded head coach because they can't figure anything out there. So that's where it's like for me, it's just like if AG has an opportunity to get a head coaching job, and he's going to have an opportunity, I think he's going to be able to pick from 2 or 3, to be honest. And I think the Saints is going to be the one he chooses. I think AG is instantly, as a defensive head coach in the NFL or defensive-minded coach in the NFL, you take those jobs instantly, whether you think it's a good position or not. Like AG being a defensive mind doesn't have like the options to be like, hey, I just want to wait. I want to wait until the best opportunity. Like, yeah, I mean, he might have an opportunity at one point, but as a defensive coach, it's those opportunities don't come around a lot anymore. Like, look at Saleh just got fired, defensive coach. Like, they just don't work out. Like, D'Amico's the one that's working right now in the NFL. But Ben, the situation with Ben is we've already seen Ben 2 years in a row essentially turn jobs down. Like AG, I don't know. There was no confirmation or anything. Like AG or he interviewed for positions. I don't know if he was offered anything, and nothing came out that he was. It came out that Ben had offers, obviously, and he had his pick from whatever team he wanted to go to, essentially. So I think Ben is in a position to where he's able to wait more because he is on the offensive side of the ball. I wouldn't be shocked if there was nothing that opened up this offseason, and Ben's like, I don't like any of those offenses. I don't like what they have going on. I want to wait to see maybe where Shedeur Sanders goes or where these players go, and then I'll make a pick after this year. But yeah, I think AG, I think he's a lock to get a head coaching job. I think he's gone after this year. And then you got to start thinking about who's next in line for AG.
So, you know what, Boone?
Well-deserved, too. Well-deserved by AG because he has coached his ass off the last 2 or 3 years and with tough defensive rosters. And like last year, wasn't the best defensive roster. The man pulled a rabbit out of the hat every single week after the second half of the year. So he deserves all that credit.
You know, Boone?
What?
Proud of you. Proud of you. All right.
Hey.
Because everything you said about offensive coaches, spot on. I'll ask you guys this. I'm gonna put you on the spot. We're gonna have some tough conversations. Because I don't want people to don't feel pressured to answer one way because it doesn't take away from the job he's done in Detroit. But I'm just gonna ask you point blank. Do you think he succeeds as a head coach?
AG?
Yes.
I'll answer. I'll be very honest. Yes. I think he's like the Dan Campbell, D'Amico Ryans type, where he's a former player. He's hard-nosed. He knows exactly what players want. He's able to build a culture. Like I think there's defensive-minded coaches who didn't play. I don't think Robert Saleh played in the NFL. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he did. I don't think Matt Eberflus, defensive guy, he might have played in the NFL back in like the 30s. I don't know. But like I think like it's like the D'Amico and the Dan Campbell type of thing to where it's like he's played before. He knows what it takes. He's been in the locker room over the last 4 years in Detroit. Like he's going to take that same culture in Detroit. Now, I will say this, Jeff, one big thing, and it's not always on the head coach. Does he have a good GM? Like that's what it comes down to. Like Dan's very good. He installed a culture that no one in the NFL could do. And I think like I give credit all to Dan almost. And I've said this before because he brought the grit culture and that's like he embodied what they are. But guess what Brad did? Brad brought him players too. So as long as he's getting players and if he can instill what he's about and like who he is as a former player, I think he's going to be successful. I don't see a world he's not.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good.
Depends on his quarterback. Because I think when you look at the defensive coaches that got hired in 2024, obviously Harbaugh's been there before. He's got Herbert. Raheem Morris, secondary head coach, and then he was a defensive coordinator for the Rams. Pretty much the same path as Aaron Glenn. He has Kirk Cousins. They even drafted Michael Penix. So his quarterbacks are good. He's succeeded. You can say what you want about Mike McDonald as far as his defense, but Geno Smith, okay quarterback. And so far you look at what he's done, he's been an okay head coach. And then finally Gerard Mayo. Kind of too early to tell with him. He doesn't have a lot of talent, but with Drake May continuing to play the way that he does, New England doesn't look as bad. But then the ones that kind of stick out, you talk about like the Robert Saleh, they got Zach Wilson. So AG, that's why the part why I don't think it's 100% a lock, because I think AG is aware of that, and AG is doing it without Aiden Hutchinson this year. He's going to get Aiden Hutchinson back next year, and we have to see the openings that are there. But if there's no shiny, attractive piece on the offensive side of the ball, like I think New Orleans is a match like because of the connection there. But when you look what he's actually inheriting, it's going to be a very old roster. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu. They just traded away Marshawn Lattimore. They got problems at quarterback. Alvin Kamara is on a contract that's getting older, and he's becoming more expensive. And your number one receiver, Chris Olave, right now might not be playing football next year because of the concussions. So that's why when you look at it, I just think that AG, if he gets Aiden Hutchinson back next year, he's going to have the spots that follow around. So I think it makes sense for him to find a job. Like, obviously, he's a defensive coach, but I think as defensive coaches had more success, which I think will happen around the NFL, teams will kind of pivot a little bit more and realize, okay, if you can get a good offensive mind, like Jeff and you guys have been saying, then he's going to go for it. But right now, I'd have to see the openings. I think as long as he has a good quarterback, he'll be fine. But I think any defensive head coach that doesn't have a good OC or quarterback is not going to have success. He's going to do a great job at leading the locker room. But I just don't see anything attractive for him right now in the openings.
Yeah, no, Lucas kind of took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say there's just certain situations and certain scenarios, like good quarterback or not having a quarterback, not having a good GM, that I think obviously that are out there. Like there's jobs out there that he wouldn't be fit for, obviously wouldn't do great in just because given the scenario. But I do think he has all like the qualities that you look for in a head coach. So I think he will do well, but like I just don't think there's that many teams out there that are offering great scenarios for a first year head coach to kind of walk into. So I don't know. Might be better off if he did just stay another year and kind of work with the Lions defense. I'm just some of the situations out there, just you don't want to just leave just to leave, in my opinion, just to go take a head coach job.
Yeah, you know, I look at it like this. I think obviously the situation does matter. It has to matter. But when you look at AG as a defensive mind, as a defensive coordinator, he is excellent. He does display a lot of those leadership abilities that you look at as a head coach, the way he speaks at the podium. I mean, just his presence. It's like, okay, yeah, he could definitely be a head coach. But you guys, you know what? You know, hey, good job, fellas. Hey,
what?
I don't even have to. Guess what? As long as he gets his OC right. Klotz nailed it, huh?
OC and GM, or if they have a good GM.
Yeah, that's it. That's the point I make with D'Amico. Bobby Slowik nailed it. But here's the problem. He's got to continue to hit it. You know what I mean? He's got to continue. He has CJ Stroud, though. So to your guys' point, he has a great quarterback. But it's just harder. I mean, you look at the last Super Bowl winners, and at least the last like 14 Super Bowl winners. You have Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Bruce Arians, Andy Reid, and then you have Bill Belichick, of course. And if that, I guess, could be like the outlier. I mean, he had Tom Brady, but still, Bill Belichick, greatest coach. Pete Carroll, another defensive minded. So you have Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. But besides that, you have Doug Peterson, Gary Kubiak, John Harbaugh. What would you put like John? Is John, I guess,
defensive? So like John and Mike Tomlin kind of got hired in the same era.
I think they are like, I don't think people like the point to that is like there are defensive head coaches that are successful. I think the way the game's going, and you see like those types of like Mike Tomlin. I know Arthur Smith wasn't a good head coach, but just trying to go find these offensive minds because like in the NFL, it's like you have to go out and you have to have an offensive mind in the NFL now. Like it's a quarterback's game essentially. If you want to win a Super Bowl, like Andy Reid, the best offensive mind in the NFL. Like you go look at the Green Bay, like all of these teams at the high level, like Kyle Shanahan. Like you're chasing a guy like that who is just offensive minded to help your quarterback.
Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.